woman writes a poem. It is out in, if I'm not mistaken, San Francisco. Somebody hears about the poem in the early 90s. She writes again mid-80s. Someone hears about it early 90s. It was like an adult read it to their class. One of the kids in that class was under that like, hey, this is really cool, here's what we did today, was telling their parents about it. Their parent was a reporter for, I think, the San Francisco Chronicle. So the reporter did a story on it. As a result of the story, word gets out about this idea of just randomly doing kind things for people. And in 1990-something, 95, it becomes what we might call a day of where the purpose, the intent, the awareness is to do random acts of kindness for other people. I'm going to ask you a question. So I'm talking to you now in mid-August, 3 weeks, 18 days into August. I want you to, I don't know, just curious. Can you think back this month of August? Has someone done something that you would say has been kind towards you? I know in asking the question, I'm curious because it could fall one of two ways. One, you might really be sitting here thinking, in 3 weeks' time, no one has done anything that I would say catches my attention as being kind to me. That's entirely possible, right? In fact, if you were pressed, maybe it's been a little bit longer than that since you could go back and say, someone actually, this happened, and it sort of caught me by surprise, and that was a very gracious act. Some of you, it could be a very long time. I would also like to ask the question, how long has it been since you've done something kind for people? I don't ask it in a guilt way, but I do ask it in a way that says, when was the last time that you intentionally went out of your way to do something kind for someone else? Because sort of kindness flows both ways, right? I want to receive kindness, but we also ought to be a people who give kindness. We're away on vacation. I have two friends that retired on the week of July 26th. That was Friday, the 26th. My good friend Chip, who doesn't watch so I can tell his story. Chip retired from the post office after 26 and a half years. His wife Wendy has been in the nursing field for longer than that. Wendy retired on Thursday the 25th. Chip retired on Friday the 26th. I called him like 2 weeks out and said, Chip, dude, you got 2 weeks, you can make this. Don't get fired, okay? Hang in there, man. And we were laughing about that. I called him a week out. I said, man, you're down to 5 days, right? I said, are you guys going to have a party? He said, we're not going to have a party. I said, what? You're retiring and you're not having? He said, post office doesn't throw parties. Now, I don't know if that's true, if any post workers are working, all right? But I had the impression the government doesn't throw you a party if you retire, okay? So I'm just ding, 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 ding. I said, well, you going to do something for Wendy? We ain't going to do anything. Our girls are going to take us to dinner. So that's it? You spent 26, 30 years of your life working, and no one's going to recognize that? To me, that just seems weak. And yet, I wonder, it's sort of our culture, isn't it? You spend your life into doing something, that's like a barely blip, and you're just moving on to the next thing. So it's going, okay, man, I'm going to do something. He said, no, I ain't doing anything. I said, okay, I'm going to do something. So I called them about a couple days later, and I said, hey, here's the deal. We're going to be up there in a couple weeks. I'd like to throw a surprise 60th birthday party for Patty. Her birthday was in June. She needed to celebrate with friends. I said, Chip and Wendy, would you help me throw a party for Patty? And they're like, oh, that sounds so cool. I said, I'll get everybody together. Just want to know you guys are going to be there. Yeah, of course we'll be there, right? So then I said to Patty, I said, I can't believe no one's throwing a surprise party for Chip and Wendy. We got to do something. And so Patty and I are planning. I get hold of Chip and Wendy's daughters. I'm like, man, let's just get people together to throw a surprise retirement party for them. So the day comes, Sunday, August 4th, 2 weeks ago today. We're at a restaurant, and it was the coolest thing. We got about 35 people assembled that are friends of everybody. And I got both of them coming together, Chip and Wendy and Patty, and we throw back the curtain, and everybody goes, surprise! And I'm watching Patty look at Strickland's and go, this is for you! And Strickland's are looking at Patty going, no, this is for you! And we had balloons for Patty, and we had balloons for Chip and Wendy, and everybody was surprised. And for 2 hours, you know what we did? We just ate, and we laughed, and we talked to one another. Doesn't take much to be kind. It doesn't take much to help other people feel appreciated. And one of the things that I'm owning in my faith these days is this. I think I grew up, and I don't know if this resonates with you, I grew up with thinking a lot about what it is, what we need to believe. Got to believe the right things. And that's true. I'm not backing off on that. I need to believe and trust that Jesus is my Savior. He is God who came here. He loves me. He gave his life for me. That's what Bob and Olivia led us in singing. I get that. But I find that for many of us, our faith hasn't translated into actions. And we got a bunch of stuff up here that we know, and we struggle to get it out of our hands. And so in 2 Peter 1, where we've been hanging out of this idea of the secret sauce and making this, if you'd open your Bible there, I want us to see today how big a deal kindness is. Being kind to other people makes the list of things that ought to identify us as followers of Jesus. If you remember, 2 Peter was written to a group of people that were living under Nero, a group of Christians. It was not good days politically. It was not a good day to be a believer, okay? Nero ended up blaming Christians for the fire and a lot of the ills that was happening in the society, and he took out his, whatever you want to say, retribution on Christians. To that group of people, Peter writes this letter. And he talks about in verse 3, we've said his power, God's power has given us everything we need for life and how to live a godly life through our knowledge of Jesus who's called us to his own glory. When Olivia sings, I am a child of God, I am a child of God, that's a true statement. You belong to the Father. He comes on down and he says, now, all right, because of what Jesus has done for you, make every effort to add to your faith. You've got a building block of faith. I was thinking of it this way. Anybody like Legos? Usually with Legos, there's a base. And on the base, you begin to put the blocks, right? And you make something and it stays there on the base. The base is our faith in Christ. The Lego blocks, the things you're building, he goes on now and he begins to talk about. Add to that base of your faith goodness, goodness knowledge, knowledge self-control, self-control perseverance, perseverance godliness, which Eric covered last week, and to godliness brotherly kindness. Does it matter? Heard a story of a young man by the name of Matt. Matt, towards the end of school, was clearing out his locker. He's taking everything he had with him. It was in his arms. And as he's on his way out of school, Matt trips, and everything ends up on the ground. Phil comes along. Phil doesn't know Matt. He just sees Matt now trying to put everything back together, sort of like eggs that have been broken, and you're trying to put them back in the shell. He can't do it, but he's struggling, and so Phil offers to help Matt. Out of that conversation and that help, a friendship develops, and it's just a couple of weeks later where they're getting like a burger together, having a drink and just having a burger, having a simple lunch together, where Matt looks at Phil and he just says, I want to thank you for that day. Just thanks for helping me out that day. He's like, oh, that's no problem. There's no big deal, you know. I mean, I was right there, you know. Don't worry about it, right? He said, no, you don't understand. He said, I was cleaning out my locker so as to not leave a mess. And Phil said, what do you mean not leave a mess? And Matt says to him, I had taken enough of my mom's sleeping pills that I was cleaning out my locker so that no one would have to clean that out, and I was going to go home and I was going to take all those sleeping pills. Said, when you helped me out, you showed me that maybe I might have a friend. I think we underestimate the power of our kindness and the difference it might make in someone else's life. I think you don't know how big a deal it is when you are gracious to other people that you rub shoulders with. I think we all assume that we know what's going on in our worlds because you know what's going on in your world. And because you're thinking, I'm not going to hurt myself, therefore others must not going to be hurt themselves. That's the way you operate. And what if we could just open our eyes to see people around us and say, hey, how big a deal is it if I just fill in the blank? Be kind, be gracious. Peter says, to your faith in Jesus, here's what I want you to build on. Add kindness. Add brotherly kindness. So here's what I want to do. Kindness cares a little more. That's what I want us to understand this morning. I'm guilty of this. God has been working on me with this one. It's like, pinging me. I'm the guy who generally looks at things that are going on, and I will say, I could care less. Unless it directly involves me, I don't care. Why do I care? And I think that kind of mindset permeates us. I don't care. And it kind of seeps into our relationships. I don't care. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. It's just like, I don't know if I feel like, if you can relate, like I'm just spent. My bandwidth is all gone. I don't have any more capacity to care. Kindness cares a little more. In a careless world, in a I could care less world, kindness cares. That's all it is. So what is it to, as I said here, brotherly kindness is what we've tried to say as a church, is just to bring the love of Jesus to the lives of people. On your notes there, here's what I want you to do. The word kindness, what comes to mind? When you think of kindness, just what comes to mind? It's not a hard word, but I'm curious what you think of when you hear kindness. Do you hear weakness? Kind people are weak people? Kind people get stepped on? Nice guys finish last? Is that what we say? Kindness simply means to be considerate of other people. Kindness means that the opposite of kindness is rudeness. Rudeness, I was thinking this week, think of sandpaper. Sandpaper just grinds. You don't put sandpaper against your skin. You don't go like that. Why? Because it hurts, because it just rubs the wrong way. That's what rude people do. Kind people are compassionate people. Kind people are, as I wrote here, they are friendly people. Kind people are willing to go the extra mile. One person I read says kindness is to voluntarily use your time. So you, by being... When was the last time somebody did that for you? When was the last time somebody took their time, their money, their resources to help you out? How long's it been? That's an interesting question. How long's it been since you've gone out of your way to use your time, your money, your resources to help someone else? And what I'm hoping in just a little bit is to say to you, it's maybe not as hard as we think it is. Kindness is something we do that benefits someone else. The American Psychological Association said it's usually thought of as motivated by truly wanting to help someone, not by fear of punishment. Because there's different kinds of kindness. See if you can relate to any of these. Any of you ever witnessed someone being kind to someone else because they were going to get something out of it? Yeah, absolutely, right? When does it often happen? The place I thought was in the workplace. How many of you are kind to a superior, not because you like them, not out of the goodness of your heart, but you know they hold the purse strings to you. You know they're the ones who determine if you're going to get ahead, so you're going to be kind to them when you'd really rather do what? but that is a fake kind of kindness, right? There's kindness that we use with friends and family. You generally like the other people in your family and your friends. You get along, Thanksgiving, Christmas. You're kind and gracious to other people. And then there's a kindness that we don't do enough of, and that is being kind to each other, kind to ourselves. When was the last time you were kind to yourself? What would it look like for you to be kind to yourself? Here's how I know if you're kind to yourself. Straight up. Ready? Interested? How many of you are still dealing with feelings of guilt over something and you haven't let it go? Why won't you let it go? Why do you keep beating yourself up over your past failures? Why do you allow things that have happened back here to determine what's going to happen to you today and tomorrow and how you feel about it? That's being kind to yourself. Jesus has forgiven you, but you and I, we can't seem to forgive ourselves. That's interesting to me. But we've got to learn to practice being kind, getting rest, being gracious to ourselves. And here's what I find, maybe not so true in your world. I find that people that are not kind to themselves are not able to be kind to other people. Might be a boss, might be a teacher, might be a coach, and they're rude and they're bullying, and I bet you it's because they're carrying some stuff, and that's just a natural thing that comes out. Kind people, considerate people, people who understand themselves are able then to pass that on to other people. You show me somebody who's rude and mean to other people, and I will show you someone who's dealing with some stuff on the inside. So Peter says, hey, Christians, be kind. Be considerate. Think of other people. Put other people first. Be friendly. Be gracious to one another. And here's the question that I want to pose for some of you in here who right now wonder, Mike, why is it a big deal? What are the benefits of being kind? Like, who cares? Who cares? Back to where I started with. Who cares if you're kind? In the dog-eat-dog world, if you don't stick up for yourself and you don't put yourself first, right? Aren't you going to fall behind? Why does it matter if you're kind? I'm going to tell you at least physically what it does for you. Proverbs 11:17 I thought was interesting. I had to go back and read it 3 times. It says, a kind man benefits, and the first 2 times I did it is like I'm just on autopilot. A kind man benefits others. Solomon says a kind man benefits himself. And a rude man, and kind to others, are less depressed. Kind people are less anxious. Kind people have lower blood pressure. And then, like, I'm asking myself, why? That just doesn't make any sense. How does an act of being kind towards others help me with stuff on the inside? Here's one way to think about it. I want you to think of the last person that hurt you. Who's the last person that hurt you? I'm just curious. I'm just curious. I'm going to ask you to do something I don't normally ask you. I'm not putting you on the spot. I want you to think of the last person who hurt you. Can you put your hand up? Can you think of somebody? Can you? No? Okay, then most of you are doing really good. You haven't been hurt by somebody. To those of you who have been hurt by somebody and a name popped in, how does kindness help you? You're still thinking of them, aren't you? I asked you and you thought of them. Have you let it go? Do you have to fake it when you're around them? Do you have to pretend to be nice when inside you really don't want to be? What's that doing to your hormones inside? Can you understand that if you come to a spot of kindness and forgive and let that thing go, how it might help you on the inside? Or you can hang on to the hurt and nurse it over and over. Maybe God's onto something when he says, when you think about adding to your faith something, think about adding kindness. Think about being gracious and considerate to other people. So you got friends, you feel better. There's this thing called the helper's high, which there's a spot in your brain that when you help other people, it actually reduces things in your head that really make you feel good. Conversely, when you steal, and I mean that in the sense of when you're just thinking of yourself and you're grabbing for yourself, it sucks energy. When you are gracious, it gives you energy. It really brightens your day. So God, when he told Peter, hey, tell people, listen, one of the things that ought to happen right next to godliness is to be kind. He's doing it for my benefit as well as the other person's benefit. So what would it look like to be kind? Now I want to share a story with you. See here. That's David. That's a guy by the name of Mephibosheth. 2 Samuel 9 is the story. I want to put it in modern context for you. Two guys go off to war. In the course of going off to war, Jim and Don become best friends. They serve together. They're in the same platoon together. They're seeing battles together. And in one of those battles, Jim is fatally wounded. Bullet pierces underneath the armor, strikes an artery, and he bleeds out in his best friend's arms. In the course of that happening, Don says to Jim, man, I'm here for you. I've got your family. I will see you in another place, another time. And he literally holds his friend as his friend dies. But battle wages on. There's no time to bury the dead there. You've got to get up and get moving. And so that happens. And Don gets up, and he eventually works his way back. He starts doing well in business. He moves up the corporate ladder. And there comes a point when something triggers a flashback to that battle scene, holding his friend. And he remembers the promise that he made that he would look after his family. He just starts hunting, Googling, seeing who he can find. And one day he comes across the fact that this guy had a son. And so he travels on his own dime to meet this son, finds out this son has had a really hard life. He's addicted to some stuff. He's hurting. He's messed up. He wants to meet with him. The son doesn't want to. They finally come together, and he says to him, I want to take you in. And the guy pushes back and says, I got my own life here. I'm not interested. He said, no, I made a promise to your dad. He was my best friend. I'm going to fulfill that promise. I want to take you in. And so from that day forward, Don takes in Jim's son and treats him like his own. In 2 Samuel 9, you have the story of King David, who made a promise to his best friend Jonathan that if anything were to happen, they would each take care of each other's family. Jonathan's killed in battle. David goes on, he's king, he's kingdom, he's big man on campus, he's everything you think of, type A driven CEO, no reason to worry about anybody else underneath him when one day he remembers a promise that he made. So he looks up this Jonathan's son, and he finds out he's got a son who at age, because King Saul, grandpa, Jonathan, dad, had both been killed in battle. The son was dropped. And the course of the drop landed on his back. And in landing on his back, he broke his back. And the 5-year-old Mephibosheth never walked again. He grows up. They're running to the desert because when kings come in, what do kings do? Kings don't want any threat to the throne. Mephibosheth still would have been a rightful threat to the throne. He's no match for David. He's got no army, so he's just hiding. He's scared. And one day the king sends for him, and he's scared spitless now. What am I going to do? I've been hiding out in this place called Lo-Debar, which simply means the desert place. I've been trying to stay under the radar, and now David found me. So David brings him in, And in this chapter, I've got 4 observations of what I think kindness looks like, 4 thoughts I want to leave you with, what it looks like and sounds like and feels like to be kind. Here's the first one. I hope that it was first one. There it is. Kindness comes from strength. Weak people can't be kind. When I see every day, and I read in the newspapers, as you do, comments that are made, things that are said about other people, and it could be politics, it could be something happens here in our community. The thing that strikes me over and over again is we've come to, I feel like, say that mean people, rude people, they're like the top dogs. And one of the things that I think we see is that weak people are unable to be kind. Kindness, you being able to be considerate and think of other people, comes from a place of strength, not weakness. David looked around and he realized, I'm in a good spot. God has blessed me. God has been kind to me. Who can I show, as it says here in 2 Samuel chapter 9, and the first verse was kind of interesting, telling for me. Is there anyone still left of the house of Saul or of Jonathan to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? He's out there, so who's still out there? Is there anybody there? And this guy says, well, yeah, he has verse 3. The king asked again, is there no one still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness? And this guy by the name of Ziba, Z-I-B-A, said to the king, well, there's still a son of Jonathan. He's a cripple in both his feet. David didn't have to go looking for this guy. He's running a kingdom. You're a busy person. I mean that graciously, right? You got things you're doing. You got places you're going. Here's things you want to accomplish. Why should you look out for other people? Why should you? Why should you care about other people? I'm not trying to make you crass. I'm just saying, isn't it fair to say, like your life's pretty full? You don't really have time to be looking for other people, do you? Because I don't. I got stuff I'm doing, places I want to go. Walk past people in hallways, don't make eye contact. See people that you just don't say hi. Don't look up. Why don't you do it? Because you're busy. You're going somewhere. You don't have time to stop and talk, right? David looked around and he said, hey, is there anybody still out there? And one of the things I want you to understand is kind people operate from a place of strength. Weak people are rude. Weak people name call. Weak people insult. Weak people think they're better than others. Kind people, gracious people are able to stop and say, hey, let's talk. How's it going? What's up? I notice. I see. Being rude is easy. It doesn't take any effort, and it's a sign of insecurity. Rude people really are insecure. And then insecurity masks itself as trying to be bravado. I'm a tough guy. When really what you're trying to do is you hope no one's... Being kind is not always easy when you deal with rude people. Kindness is a sign of a person who's done a lot of personal work and has come to a great self-understanding and wisdom. Kindness is a sign of strength. Kindness means that you have looked at your own insecurities and you've come to a place where you, hear me, doggone it. This is where we take what we do on Sunday and it makes a difference on Wednesday. If you're a child of God, if you can sing that and you know the Father is your Father, then you would say, as Jesus said, what can man do to me? Why are you afraid of the opinions of other people? Why do what other people think about you scare you? Why do you bow to other people's opinions and you alter your life instead of what God would have you do, you bow to the impressions and the thoughts of others. Weak people do that. Weak people play to the crowd. Strong people know who they are and what they stand for. And they won't bow because you think I ought to be wearing blue today. I respect your opinion. I believe you maybe have a basis for forming your opinion. But before God, I have a life to live. I have decisions to make for my family. Weak people can't do that. Weak people want others' approval. Strong people want others' approval, but if I don't get it because you don't like what I'm doing, I'm able to move on. I could just stop right there and send you out with some things if you really wanted to think about that. Whose opinion are you living for? Whose approval matters to you and why? Who are you living for? The decisions you're making as a man, as a woman, as a student. Why are you making the decisions you're making? What's driving you? Is it out of a position of strength of who you are, or because you're trying to get so hard you just want people to like you? Kind people operate from strength. Second thing, kind people, I don't want to lose that. Kind people speak words of hope. The video. 15 minutes, he stood on that platform encouraging Casey to do that. Just think about that for a second. A middle school student got up on that platform for 15 minutes to talk to an adult and encourage an adult to do this. Here's Mike. Listen, I think you ought to do this. If you don't want to do it, I'm moving on. How we are? I don't have 15 minutes to cheerlead you on. Come on, you're a big boy or big girl. Just do the right thing. What would the world be like if we had more people that were like this young man, that were vested in other people and cheering them on and encouraging them and not leaving them? Not leaving them. I'm going to pick on Josh because he's not here. How easy is it to stand on the ground and shoot a camera video up? How much more challenging is it to get up on the 40 feet high and be there right with someone saying, you got this, you can do this? In this chapter, there's 3 or 4 times that whenever Mephibosheth is mentioned, he's mentioned as the crippled. He's the crippled. He's the crippled. He's the... David says, where is this son? See, words of hope give people dignity. Words of help tell people they can do this. Words of help tell people they got this. What if we were more like, hey, man, you can make this happen. Hey, I'm here with you. What would that look like in your marriage? What would that look like in your marriage? We found out over break that a couple that we know are divorcing. Been together a little bit of time. I'm going to call it quits. One of the things that struck me as I listened to this unplayed just a little bit were the words they said to each other, and they were not helpful words. What are the words that you exchange with your spouse? Are they words that build up? Are they like, oh, here we go, negative? David looked at the son who had nothing to offer him, and he said, hey, dude, you're the son of. He was my friend. Which led to the third thing that I saw, that kindness is action, it's not accidental. He said, you're going to eat at my table the rest of your days. I have it colored in here. 4 times David says to Mephibosheth that you will always eat at my table. Verse 7, verse 10, verse 11, verse 12. 12 verses, all there is, 4 times. David says to him, you're going to eat with me. I'm going to treat you like one of my own. See, kindness is love in action. It's not just good feelings inside, it works its way out to your hands. It's being practically helpful to people. It's writing notes, it's offering to help, it's offering to pick up, offering to give a ride. When you care about people, you're willing to do stuff. Kindness is love in action. It's not just feeling emotions or thoughts of empathy only. Kindness is doing something. Kindness is trying to take what you have and alleviate someone else's whatever's going on. I heard the story of Gandhi. I thought this was interesting. Gandhi was in a rush to board a train. As he's getting on takes a step up, his sandal falls off his foot, off his right foot. But the train's moving, right? So he's there with one of, a friend that he's traveling with or whatever, and they're in a train, and as they're looking, there goes the sandal. And he's like, what am I going to do? And so he doesn't wait. The story goes, he doesn't wait very long. He takes the other sandal off, and he throws it with the one to hit the one that fell off. And his friend said, why did you do that? And Gandhi said this. He said, one sandal isn't going to do me any good, but two sandals might help someone who doesn't have shoes. What was he thinking? Of somebody else? Could have been all wrapped up in his misfortune. Oh man, I got to replace my sandals. He was thinking of the next guy, and maybe the next guy will benefit. Who will you encounter this week that needs a word of encouragement, needs a pat, needs $5, needs $100, needs to have a party thrown? And what will you do when you encounter them? What can you do to alleviate someone else's pain? David said to the son who had nothing to offer him, from this day on, you're going to be with me. She led me to the fourth observation, that I think that when we know the kindness of Jesus, that's what changes everything. Romans 2:4 says, Paul says, do you disregard the riches of God's kindness, his tolerance, and his patience, not realizing that it's God's kindness that leads you to repentance? One of the things that troubles me with what I see out in Christendom today is the number of people who I would say are pronouncing judgment. You don't like somebody's lifestyle? They're going to hell. Right? Going to hell. Because they're not living according to the book, right? You don't like the choices someone makes? Let's rant on them. Let's blast them. Like somehow that's going to encourage people. When I read here, what Paul said about you was it was God's kindness that drew you to him. And he's still operating from a position of strength of kindness to people. It's his love that we sing about. Is his love just for believers? Because God hates those who are Democrat. Right? God hates the Republican. Right? God hates the one that's against whatever you believe. Right? That's how we operate, right? His kindness calls us all to repentance. And so that you do not mistake what Mike just said, there will be a day of judgment. Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus is Christ, to the glory of God. One day you will bow. I don't care what your beliefs are today. It makes no difference to me, because I know that either the Word of God is true or life is true. But there's a difference there, and I choose to trust the Word of God. Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus is God. That day's not this day. This, Jesus said, is a day of jubilee. This, Jesus said, is a day where we open up arms wide. This is a day where we remind you that you are loved and you are cared for and you matter to Jesus. And you and I get a chance to help other people enter into that. So you're out living life this week and you encounter people. How will you treat them? We went to dinner at a really nice restaurant. We must have had this guy at our table 5 times asking, what can I do? How can I help? Fogo de Chao. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Really nice place. Brazilian steakhouse. At the end of our meal, I specifically looked at the guy and I said, I want to thank you for taking care of us today. You have done an exceptional job of just making sure everything we need has been provided. And anytime we needed anything, all we had to do was ask. And he said, he thanked me for saying something. And I wonder, how often do we just compliment people who serve us? Or we don't think about it because they're just supposed to serve you, right? That's what they are, servants, right? They don't need thanks, right? You don't need to recognize them, right? You don't need to say anything, right? Because you're busy. You got blinders on. What would the world look like if we were to take the time to see people and show appreciation for people? Team's coming up. Person writes, one time I was traveling in Switzerland. I was sitting at a crowded bus stop. I'm at the bus stop. People were kind of, milling around like they do. They're waiting for the next bus to come. We knew the bus would be there on time. We weren't worried about it. Swiss are very accurate, time, punctual people. So as we're waiting for the bus to come, I can see coming down the street this little guy of 6 or 7. And he sort of just, it doesn't look like there's anybody with him. And as he is walking and noticing people, he suddenly begins to say, somebody. And he gets a little louder, somebody. And I'm looking around like, where are the kids' parents? And the person who's writing is like, I don't see any parent with them, but he's getting more frantic. You can just see it in his voice and in his eyes as he's looking around. He said, he's shouting now, somebody. This person said, I thought to myself, somebody ought to do something. Finally, the bus pulled up and people started to get on, all the while this little guy was yelling somebody. And then out of the crowd, a young woman came up and grabbed him and whispered in his ear, somebody. Somebody is here. And the little boy calmed down. Everybody else who had sort of gotten out of the way is on the bus now, and he said, I'm watching this scene unfold, and then out of the corner of my eye, I catch another woman running to this little guy. And it dawns on me, the first woman who came up and just hugged the little guy and said, somebody is here, was just a friend. Just someone trying to be kind to a little boy in need. His mom came running up and grabbed him and embraced him and thanked the stranger for being a somebody. We need somebodies. We absolutely need more somebodies. You can be a somebody. It doesn't take education, PhD. It doesn't take smarts. You know what it takes to be a somebody? And here's what I think separates probably half of you why you can't. And I don't mean to slam you. You will know when I say it, whether it's you or not. You know what separates somebodies? Courage. Everybody else got on the bus. One young woman had the courage to go up to a child she didn't know, wrap her arms around him and say, somebody is here, while everybody else got on the bus. That's why I know how hard it is. That's why it strikes me that Peter said, to your faith in Jesus, be kind. Have the courage to be kind to people. Kind to yourself, helpful to others, offer a smile, give a hand, be generous, look to see if there's somebody around you who can help. Maybe even a little boy that you run up to and just put a hug on because he needs somebody. Will you join me in being a somebody? It's an honest question. Are you willing to be a somebody? Let's stand and sing with these guys.